everyone, my name's Holly and I recently got back from a trip to Disney World, and since I went during this whole time in our life, I thought I would talk about, did I feel safe in Disney? I'm going to kind of qualify this a little bit by saying that if there were no restrictions, I would have still most likely felt comfortable. However, so of course I felt comfortable going to Disney World. I was one of those people that when this first started happening and flight prices were crashing, my dad and I booked 2 trips, one in March and one in April, for a few days. We booked flights, we booked hotels, we did everything. Of course we didn't end up going because everything was shut down. I wasn't scared. Now that doesn't mean I don't think that this isn't real or you shouldn't take precautions. I do, but I just want you to know I'm not terrified. I think that because I'm in a couple of Facebook groups, and I will say that there are people who are constantly asking for reassurance, and if you think you're going to be afraid, legit afraid your whole vacation, I would highly recommend not going. Because the big thing is you can control what you do, but you cannot control what other people do. I'm going to tell you some of the things that I saw, what I saw in general for compliance to Disney rules and everything, but that doesn't mean that's going to be your experience, and you may or may not be comfortable with things that I'm comfortable with. We did fly down. I live in New York, and which is a challenge living in New York. So I did end up having to, right before we went, so we went November 7th to the 14th. So a few days before we left, the rules for returning to New York changed from having to quarantine for 2 weeks after returning to being able to test out of that 2-week quarantine, where you have to get a test in the state that you are in within 3 days of leaving the state, and then you have to get a test on your 4th day when you return to New York. And if you have to quarantine, obviously, between your arrival in New York and that 4th day, you actually have to quarantine longer than that. And then once you get the results of both of those tests, if they are both negative, you are free. Editing Holly here. I just want to add that just as an experience of what happened when I returned to New York, I ended up having to get my test on the 5th day because I couldn't get in on the 4th day. I live in Rochester, New York, which is where we have the micro cluster. So a lot of people told me it's just because it's really busy and everything. I don't know, whatever. My dad was able to get tested on his 4th day, but he had to go to Niagara in order to do that, which in retrospect I should have just done. He ended up getting so he got tested on a Tuesday. He ended up getting his results Sunday morning, I think, the following Sunday. I didn't get my results until November 27th, and November 27th was my 14th day home. So I basically had to quarantine anyways. Yeah, just thought I'd add that. Hi, Murphy. I fully expect it to be negative. I did get a test down in Florida, obviously, and it was negative. Down there, actually the day we went and got our tests, which was Friday the 13th, they had switched to, you had to get the rapid test and not the PCR. You only could get the PCR test if you were required to get it by your work or your destination. I know Hawaii is requiring a negative PCR test in order to enter or return to the state. We were apprehensive about getting the rapid test. I would still be apprehensive about it because it does have really high false negatives and false positives, and that would have sucked. A false positive would have really sucked. And we don't really know what you do if that happens, especially if you're not in your state. So in New York is not requiring a PCR test to return. They just require a negative test. And by the way, the testing in Florida, for us, it went pretty seamless. So we rented a car on Friday and from the car care center at Disney World, and we drove off property to the main gate testing location. As of when we went, it was open Monday through Friday, I think 8 to 5. We got there around 9 or 9:30 or something. We ended up waiting there. It's a walk up but everybody kind of like, you know, they socially distance. Every group's 6 feet, at least 6 feet between you. You're outside, and basically the whole parking lot was like full, obviously like socially distant. So, you know, and it took us about an hour to wait in line and get up there and get our testing. It was pretty easy. It's a self-swab, which I know a lot of colleges are doing, so they watch you do it so you do it properly and you don't, it's not like shoving the Q-tip thing all the way up your nose. My dad already got his return test today, and he said it is different because here in New York, they, or at least at our testing sites, they do it themselves, like they do it, not you, and it is a different kind of a like testing Q-tip thing, and he was like, it is different. Editing me again. It is different, and I hated it, and I almost punched the lady in the face because it was so uncomfortable. Oh, hi. I know violence is wrong, Murphy. Thank you. And everything, like, I definitely feel like I shoved that Q-tip pretty far up there. Like, I moved it to the point of, like, it being uncomfortable. Because obviously you don't want it, like, right here down at the bottom of your nose, which they'll tell you to, like, move it farther. They did to my dad and everything. But it was pretty easy. It was painless. And within 15 minutes, we got our results. They were negative, obviously. Like I said, which was great. And so that was a really easy process for us. It was free. They did, you had to like fill out a thing, like you had to register, and they did ask for your insurance, but you didn't have to provide it. Because I've had a lot of people ask me like, did you have to pay for it or anything? No, you didn't. Let's talk more about Disney. So the first thing is masks. So Disney is requiring you to wear masks at all times unless you are active. I feel like I could do the spiel. I heard they have like a voice say this all the time, everywhere, like in all the parks at Disney Springs. You are required to wear a mask at all times over your nose and your mouth unless you are actively eating or drinking while stationary and separate from other people. You can take your mask off when you're eating like in a restaurant. So once you sit down, and like only a couple restaurants actually like explicitly told us to put our masks back on when we went to go to the bathroom if we had to. To me, that's like understood, like obviously, but maybe some people need to have that explained to them. So as long as you're at your table and the tables are distanced and everything. So yeah, maybe I'll talk about restaurants here a little bit too. The tables, whether you're counter service or a sit-down dinner, the tables are distanced. Either they've removed tables or tables are blocked off so they're not seating them, or some combination of the two, so you're not really close to other people. So it's just you and your party, and then obviously your wait staff, who is always masked up. Most of the time they were wearing masks and a face shield. And so once you're at your table, you are allowed to take your mask off. And then you can eat in the wild and drink in the wild, but you are supposed to be stationary and distanced. So a lot of times what I would do is if I had to like get a drink of water, I would kind of like, I would tell my dad like, okay, I need to drink some water, so he wouldn't just keep walking. And then I would kind of step off to the side and I would try to get away from people, and then I would just take my mask down and drink some water. Or like if he was in the bathroom, I would get some water right then. And I personally would usually leave my mask on like one of my ears. This backfired at one point in Epcot. A gust of wind came and ripped my mask off, and so I got it and I threw it away. It was disposable, and I kept a couple extra masks in my bag anyway, so it's not like I was suddenly maskless. So I did that so I could kind of like put it back up, because I didn't really know like what the expectation was when it came to like, is it literally like only like as I have the, like if I'm in between, you know how like you kind of like drink a little bit and then you wait like 30 seconds and then you drink some more. Maybe other people don't drink like that, but that's how I do. I'm like, do I have to put it back on in between? Which I don't think you do, but like don't take advantage of the situation. And I would kind of do that with eating too. Like even if we were in a counter service restaurant, like if my dad was still eating and I was done, I would usually put my mask on, just because I felt like a little better about doing that in case it made other people feel more comfortable, but you probably don't have to. So I will say it is hard. It was harder for me to drink enough water because I didn't realize how much I kind of just like casually drink, which I do in my regular life, but I didn't realize I did that in like my Disney life. And so to have to like actively think about stopping, taking your mask, like removing yourself, taking your mask off, drinking, and all of that was a little bit of a challenge, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. So, and you are, like I said, expected to wear your mask at all times. So that means if you're at your resort and you are walking from like the bus stop to your room, you are still expected to wear your mask. Honestly, when it comes to like mask compliance, if I were to say where I saw the most non-compliance, it would be at the resorts, and specifically outside, like walking from the lobby to your room or whatever. I'm personally not that bothered by it. A lot of times when it would happen and you would see somebody, and I was just kind of on the lookout for it because I had heard a lot of complaints about mask compliance, but I didn't like really feel like it was that big of a deal. A lot of times when stuff like that would happen, I remember our first day we were like going up the stairs to our room and this lady came down without her mask and she was like, oh my god, I completely forgot. And I completely understand. I do that at home. One day I leave masks in my car for when I go grocery shopping, and I was like on the phone with my dad as I'm walking into the store, and I was like, I forgot my mask, and I had to walk back to my car, and I was like, how have we been doing this for like 6 months and I still forget it? So I completely understand, but a lot of times if you were walking by people and they took their mask off, they would kind of like put it back up, which technically you're not supposed to take it off. And honestly, from my perspective, it's easier to just leave it on. I get the appeal. You're alone. Several nights my dad and I would walk back from Disney Springs to our room at Saratoga Springs, and yeah, it's really tempting. I'm not seeing another person for like the whole walk. It's really tempting to take it off, and it would have been okay, you know, from like a safety perspective to take it off. But for me, honestly, it was just easier to leave it on and not forget. And I feel like, at least for me with the masks I was wearing, I started to forget that they were there. Like I just wore disposable ones. Those are the ones that I have found work the best with me when it comes to my glasses not fogging up. So that's what I chose to wear in Florida. I mainly use reusable ones here locally, like at home, but that's just for like an hour or two. It's not in the humidity. It's not with me like panting and stuff because I'm like walking far distances and everything. But I started to like kind of forget it was there. So I feel like just leaving it on is easier, but that's just my opinion. I saw almost 100% compliance in the parks. I saw a little bit of the like below the nose thing, which, can I just say, like, is that comfortable? Because it doesn't look comfortable to me. And then occasionally I would see the like actively walking with your mask down while eating and drinking. And personally, I think a lot of those people just like weren't listening to the announcements or forgot about the announcements. I don't know how you forget about them. They happen all the time, but whatever, it's fine. Some people are just oblivious, and so they don't think about it. I don't think that they were being like malicious and like flouting the rules because they're special. And I did see a lot of cast members telling people to like put their masks on, pull their masks up. Pretty much if I saw somebody with their mask like worn incorrectly and a cast member was around to see it, the cast member said something. Because I've seen some complaints about that, but I didn't, like cast members not saying something. And I did not see that happen on my trip. Also, I know Touring Plans is apparently sending somebody into 2 parks every day and like basically looking at like 500 people and judging mask compliance. Now, I don't know what their standard for compliance is, but I think that their rate is like 97 or 98%, which quite frankly I think is pretty good. So I will say something I did observe, and I have noticed this at home as well, and that is that kids seem to do a lot better with their mask compliance than adults. And I think it's especially interesting, just as an observation, as somebody who does not have children, when I see the like parents not wearing their masks properly, but the kids are fine. Like most of the kids I saw, not only were they wearing them correctly, they weren't touching them, they weren't moving them, they weren't doing anything. They were, because that's part of the thing, it's like you also should not be touching your mask. It just surprises me because a lot of times kids just emulate the behavior that they see, and so it surprises me that they would do so well when their parents are not. But I also think that kids are better at adapting. Also, at this point, a lot of kids are back in school, and so if they're required to wear a mask at school, they're kind of used to it, and maybe a lot of adults aren't. But for the most part, the kids I saw were really good at their compliance. And I did see some kids not wear their mask correctly, or like they would finish eating and not put their mask back on, and the parents were good about like I saw one parent at one point, she was like, "You're finished eating, you put the mask back on." And I think that's good. Like the rules are the rules. Whether you agree with the rules or not, they're the rules that Disney has instituted in order to enter their parks. And so you have to follow the rules. And for me, like, the other part of it is I don't want to be the one that like ruins this. I'm just excited to be able to go to Disney World. So I will do whatever the great Lord Disney needs me to do for him to feel like the company, to feel safe with having me there. So crowds. So going into our trip, the park capacity was 25%. I know our last couple of days, Disney announced that they had upped capacity to 35%. Now that does not mean that the parks are at that capacity every single day. But obviously that's something to be aware of, especially as holiday time comes, more people have vacation, most likely more people are going to travel, so I would expect the parks to be more crowded. For me in general, I took some video. I do plan on doing vlogs in the new year, and I did try to kind of like video different spots and say like what time it was and everything. It would definitely get crowded, mainly at certain parts. And for me, it was kind of like the parts that used to always get crowded. So like for me, the big one that sticks out in my head is when you go from Liberty Square to Fantasyland in Magic Kingdom, like right past Haunted Mansion and going into like the Tangled restroom area, you go under this like overhang thing, and I feel like that's a pinch point. It's a natural pinch point. And now especially you have Peter Pan, because of socially distanced queues, it kind of comes out there too. So you also have like, you have this really popular bathroom, you have like a stroller parking area, you have that queue, you have the Haunted Mansion stuff, like, and it's also just a smaller area. So you're gonna most likely be within like close proximity to other people in those moments. Personally, I'm comfortable with that. I think if you're moving and you're masked up and everything outside, there's no reason to be afraid. But of course, if you are, be aware of that. I definitely think we were able to go through the castle several times, and that was like really empty every time we did it. Going from Tomorrowland to the Hub, or the Hub to Tomorrowland, was definitely a pretty open and not congested area at all. So you could always go a different direction. That was the one I saw the most often. Nothing particularly stands out at any of the other parks. Oh, sometimes in Hollywood Studios, I feel like where like behind the Chinese theater kind of area, it could get like a little choke pointy because ABC Commissary has opened. There's tons of tables over there. It is a smaller area, so it's like a smaller area to walk down. So it can get kind of tight in there. I never felt uncomfortable. Again, I think if you're moving, you're not sticking around, you're fine. And I would say this whether or not it's COVID, just be aware of your surroundings. Like that was the biggest thing. Like you would think people would be more aware now. They're not. So there's still like big groups of people like walking down Main Street, and I'm like, can we condense please? Like, so I can get around you or whatever. Although I will say, I think for the most part, people were very respectful. People tried to stay distanced. Like when we did the cavalcades, you definitely would have a little bit more close togetherness in those moments. I think it's a couple minutes, you're fine. But for the most part, I saw a lot of people trying to be as distant as they could. Like, I would like get my spot, you know, separate from everybody else when I would hear the music. And then other people would like hear it and they would see me, and then they would try to like get a little further away from me and everything. I did see a lot of that. In the like attractions and the queues, it was great for the most part. That really, your biggest issue is two things. One is if people are going to comply or not. So some people just like don't pay attention to the lines on the ground. Now sometimes it is hard, so this is the second thing. It is hard to know when you can move ahead. In some of the queues there's a lot of like switching and you can't always see like the next place to walk. And like in Frozen, they have a cast member standing there like telling you when you can go, but not all of the attractions have that, so you kind of have to like play this game, and sometimes you'll go early and you'll be like and then there's some people who just don't care. That happened to us trying to get into the Mexico pavilion, and I told my dad, I was like, I'm not even like afraid of them being behind me. I was just like, I got so used to having personal space in the queues that I was like, could you please back up? Like, stop. I don't know what these people's problem were. They literally followed us as if it was a normal queue. But for the most part, I will say people were following it. If they didn't, it was human error, innocent error. Yeah, but again, you can't control other people. So if something like that is going to happen and it is going to bother you to the point of like you having a panic attack, which is completely understandable. I understand. As somebody with anxiety, I 100% understand. Or it's gonna like ruin your trip, or you're gonna have like a horrible moment, then maybe this isn't the time for you to go, because like I said, you cannot control other people. I would say 99% of people are great, but you never know who's gonna be with you. I felt safe on all of the rides. And I actually really liked the socially distanced queues, not just because like personal space. It was nice to not have like random kids touch my butt. That happens a lot, and it's not malicious. They don't do it. They're like little kids. Sometimes I think they would get confused about like who was their parent, and other times they just like move around and touch things, and like my butt is on like kid height for touching. But it was nice to not have random kids I don't know not touch my butt or like other parts of my body and everything. But also it was kind of nice because the queues seemed to really like move, and I would much rather walk the whole time than kind of like like stop and start. I hate that. So overall, I think Disney is doing a really good job. I think the cast members are doing a really good job. They are, for the most part, very friendly and working hard to make sure people are following the rules. And I think a lot of the guests are working hard to follow the rules as well. I think they want to be there, and they're like me, and they want to do whatever they have to do in order to be there. Oh, the buses. So I was worried about the buses because I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to wait forever. We never had to wait for a second bus, ever. And it was kind of nice to always know, like at the end of the night, you were gonna get a seat on the bus. So you're tired and everything, you know you're getting a seat. That was nice. And it's kind of nice that like they seat you. So typically the bus drivers would give you like a number, and the seats are numbered in like chunks of like 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, and tell you where to sit. So it's not that game of like, oh, where do I sit? And sometimes they would have you like get on the back of the bus if you were going in the back, especially if there was people already in the front trying to like limit cross breathing or something. I don't know. But the bus drivers did a great job. I commend the cast members. They are doing an amazing job. Please be thankful to your cast members. I feel like I'm always very nice and thankful to them, but I went out of my way to like always say thank you to every single cast member, and to tell them to have a good day, and to try and just be as friendly and nice as possible. It is hard because you can't smile. That was the worst part. It was like seeing kids like looking at you and saying hi, and normally like if kids, you know, kids just stare at you sometimes like because they're just curious, and normally I would just smile and be like, oh, like whatever, but you can't do that right now. Which is really sad. That's something I like makes me really sad in my normal New York life as well. But You know, it just means I gotta use my words more, I guess. I definitely felt safe. We are planning on going back again in January because our annual passes did get extended due to the shutdown into April, I think. So we have a short trip planned in January. I'm very excited to go again. I felt safe. I think Disney is doing tons. Oh, there is sanitizer and stuff all over the place, and I saw tons of people using sanitizer. I brought my own because I had heard bad things about the Disney sanitizer, and most of the sanitizer I find like out in the world, like at grocery stores and stuff, I don't like it. So I just brought my own, but my dad used the stuff there. He didn't really complain about it, but he's not like a complainer, so whatever. Honestly, I saw like everybody washing their hands in the bathroom. That is not something you normally see, I will be honest. One thing I would recommend is to bring some lotion, which I did do because I'm a thinker, because especially using hand sanitizer is very drying on your skin, and you probably are going to wash your hands more than normal because maybe you're going to wash your hands like before or after you eat or something, not just when you're going to the bathroom, and so your hands are more likely to like dry out. Like my nails were breaking a lot because they would just get so dry and they're already really brittle. I would use like just like I would just keep hand lotion in my bag every day and put that on a couple times. I would highly recommend something like that. It'll help out a lot. I felt safe. I felt like Disney was keeping me safe. I felt like my fellow guests were doing their best to keep me safe, and I was doing my best to keep them safe, and I'm excited to go back in January, and I hope if you're comfortable going to Disney World that you do and you have a wonderful trip. And if not, I hope you watch some wonderful vlogs. There are tons of people out there who are in Florida or just traveling who are putting out videos. I love Molly from mollyers.net. If you want to watch her videos, they're amazing. I love them, and I met her. I'm so excited, but that's not what this video is about. So you can watch those and live vicariously through other people as well. Stay safe and healthy and have a great holiday as we approach the holiday times, and I will see you next time. Bye.